Across Africa, a powerful wave of unrest is sweeping through the continent. Industrial zones once booming with Chinese investment now lie in ruins, and Beijing is racing to airlift its citizens home. From Angola to Tanzania, Kenya to South Africa, anger is erupting against what many call the new empire of debt. It began with one viral video, an altercation between a Chinese manager and a local worker in Angola. Within hours, frustration that had been brewing for years finally burst. Crowds took to the streets, factories were abandoned, and thick smoke filled the skies. What started as a workplace dispute quickly became a continental awakening. In Tanzania, police clashed with demonstrators. In Kenya, offices of major Chinese firms were set ablaze. In South Africa, massive labor unions called nationwide rallies, demanding an end to economic oppression. The so-called Belt and Road dream was beginning to unravel before the world's eyes. For 20 years, China invested billions across Africa, building roads, ports, and power plants in exchange for access to vital minerals, oil, and land. Angola once stood as the crown jewel of this cooperation. Yet beneath the surface, resentment grew. Local workers endured harsh hours, low wages, and unsafe conditions, while promises of shared prosperity faded into dust. The breaking point had come. "We are not slaves," protesters shouted as they surrounded construction sites. Graffiti on walls read, "Africa for Africans," and "End the exploitation." By sunset, Luanda looked unrecognizable, streets covered in debris, factories silent and broken. Soon, the turmoil spread. Trains stopped running in Tanzania. Trade routes were blocked in Kenya, and in Johannesburg, tens of thousands demanded justice and equality. What once symbolized global partnership had become a test of sovereignty. Beijing reacted swiftly. Charter planes and Navy vessels were dispatched to evacuate Chinese nationals. State media portrayed the crisis as isolated violence, carefully avoiding the deeper story, that after years of unbalanced partnerships, Africa had finally had enough. For many Africans, the reality is bitter. Decades of infrastructure deals and resource loans have left countries buried in debt. When they couldn't repay, control of ports and mining rights shifted to Beijing. Aid became leverage, and investment became dependence. But this time, people are reclaiming their voice. "This is not chaos. It's freedom," one activist declared as videos of burning sites spread across social media with hashtags like #Africa, for Africans, and #Take Back Africa. Millions rallied online, calling it a rebirth, the moment Africa stands up for itself. Entire villages had been erased by dam projects, forests cut down for mining, and coastal towns turned into industrial ports, all under the banner of progress. Governments, tied by loans, remained silent. But the people no longer are. In Nairobi, youth tore down Chinese corporate billboards. In Cape Town, workers' unions announced the end of economic colonization. Beijing dismissed it all as temporary unrest, yet the world is watching, and many see the dawn of a new African chapter. In Washington and Brussels, leaders call it proof of China's waning influence. In Moscow, it's seen as Africa's second liberation, this time through economics, not war. Africa is burning, but from those flames, a new force may be rising: the fight for dignity, equality, and independence. Behind closed doors in Beijing, unease grows. Senior officials are quietly questioning whether the Grand Belt and Road dream has collapsed under its own ambition. Losses in Africa now threaten years of overseas investment. A former Chinese diplomat, speaking anonymously, admitted the unrest marks the breaking point of China's global expansion model, built not on partnership, but on control disguised as cooperation. Inside China, silence reigns. Online discussions about Africa's turmoil are swiftly deleted, replaced by cheerful state broadcasts about international friendship. Yet around the world, the question is spreading: did China truly help Africa rise, or did it chain it in a different way? Trade between the two regions is now grinding to a halt. Kenyan ports are jammed with idle containers, while exporters in Shanghai and Guangzhou face massive order cancellations. What was once Beijing's proudest foreign policy achievement, the Belt and Road Initiative, has turned into one of its greatest risks. Inside China, a wave of frustration is quietly spreading. People are asking a simple question: why does Beijing keep pouring billions overseas while its own economy is gasping for air? The yuan continues to weaken, prices rise, and small businesses are collapsing. Online, despite layers of censorship, voices of dissent are breaking through. Across Africa, a new slogan now defines the mood. Aid is not freedom. The younger generation, once dazzled by promises of growth, is demanding real independence. Their message echoes across the internet: protect our land, reclaim our ports, build our future. What began as scattered protests has now evolved into a continent-wide awakening against foreign control and false prosperity. The tension is no longer confined to Africa. In Pakistan and Sri Lanka, nations deep in Chinese debt, demonstrators are taking to the streets, demanding transparency and justice. The phrase once used to celebrate Beijing's global ambition, shared development, has been replaced by a bitter reality: shared collapse. Faced with mounting unrest, China stands at a crossroads. It can attempt genuine reform to rebuild trust, or it can tighten its grip through censorship and economic pressure. But whichever path it chooses, the era when money alone secured loyalty is over. Across Africa, people are rediscovering something that cannot be bought: dignity. From Nairobi's universities to Johannesburg's factories, a new generation is rising. Students speak not of dependency, but equality. Workers march not for aid, but for respect. Even within China, quiet murmurs have begun to surface, a recognition that the leadership underestimated Africa's strength and spirit. Friendship cannot grow on debt, and loyalty cannot survive under control. This is not merely an economic breakdown. It is a global turning point. The web of loans, promises, and silent dominance that defined Beijing's outreach is starting to unravel. At home, China faces slowing growth, shrinking exports, and social tension. Abroad, its influence is fading fast. The same factories that once symbolized progress now stand idle, while videos of unrest circulate faster than censors can delete them. The illusion of unstoppable power is fading, replaced by a stark truth: empires built on control never last. Africa's uprising is no longer just a protest. It has become a declaration of independence for a new century. From the ruins of broken deals, a movement has risen, determined, fearless, and united by purpose. We will no longer live someone else's dream, declares a young activist in Nairobi. Her words, carried across millions of screens, have become the anthem of a generation. By 2025, that message has reached every corner of the world, a reminder that true partnership is not born from dominance, but from respect. The grand vision that once fueled China's Belt and Road Initiative has turned to dust. What began as a promise of shared prosperity has collapsed under the weight of greed and mistrust. The highways, ports, and railways, once built to symbolize unity, now stand as monuments of exploitation. For years, Beijing came not to empower Africa, but to extract its essence: oil, minerals, and rare earths, leaving behind mountains of debt and disappointment. The illusion of win-win cooperation has shattered, exposing an ambition that mistook control for progress. The Chinese dream in Africa, once hailed as a new dawn, has faded into silence. What could have been a story of mutual growth became a warning to the world. When power ignores humanity, it destroys itself. While Beijing counted its gains, Africa bore the cost: poisoned lands, hollow mines, and empty promises. Yet from those ashes, something extraordinary has emerged. A new Africa, awake, unafraid, and determined to rise on its own terms. The dragon came to build an empire, but in doing so, it awakened a generation that refuses to be conquered. Thank you for watching China Lens. See you in the next episode.